10k in, 5:44 pace. That's today's run, but that has not turned the whole story. Do the run stuff in a minute. That was Sunday, this is now Wednesday. First, quick bit of bike news. I still don't technically own a bike, but I have bought a bike with wheels this time. It arrives in a couple of weeks' time. It looks like this. I went to the Bike Whisperer in Newbury last week. A bike fitting expert stuck me on his jig, I think he called it. It's like an exercise bike that you can adjust every dimension on. He set it up the same as my new bike will be and said, yes, your new bike will fit you. And I go back when I get the bike to be properly dialed in on it. All very exciting, because then the Ironman training can start. What will that look like? I have absolutely no idea whatsoever. I've never done Ironman, I've never done a triathlon even. In fact, I haven't been in a swimming pool since I was about 10 years old. So there are some hurdles in the way, which is ironic because the last thing an Ironman needs is a different sporting event added to it. The plan is to do the Austrian Ironman 2021 as soon as registration opens. I am in. And in the meantime, I'm going to have to come up with some sort of training plan. I'm currently pondering coaches and online training and stuff, so that will all be covered in due course, as will the arrival of the bike when it gets here. Very exciting. For now, back to running. That run on Sunday was 10k into a 37k run, which was part of the Rat Race Runstock Weekend Virtual Challenge thing that I'd entered. Very, very simple. You enter the challenge, you run at least 5k over Friday, Saturday and Sunday, and you get a medal and a wristband. And every other 5k you do on top, you get another wristband. 15k, 3 wristbands. Very simple. To tweak the challenge a bit for myself, I decided to start at 4 o'clock on Friday and finish by 4 o'clock on Sunday. So 48 hours and get 100 kilometers done across 3 runs. So on Friday, I set off and did 32k. I did 31k on Saturday, leaving me 37k to get finished. And I was trying to think, when I make the video about this, what's my point other than I'm running 100k? And as I was leaving to do that last run, I was going out the door and one of my kids said to me, you're off again, running again. Didn't you just run like 30k 2 days in a row? How? And so I thought, how am I doing that? Ultra runners would think that's an absolute doddle, but the average runner wouldn't run 100k in 48 hours, and definitely the larger than average runner, which I am, wouldn't do without incurring potential problems. So what am I doing that means I can do that and feel pretty fine? In fact, so fine that I took Monday off. Tuesday, yesterday, did an easy 20-minute run just to make sure I felt okay. Today, I am now off to do 15k, so I feel good. How am I doing that? I'm doing it with 4 things, the 4 Fs: feet, fuel, focus, and therapy. $15k, bang on 4-minute 50 pace. Felt cool. It felt very cool. Feet. Shower, then feet. If you are larger than average, you will put a pounding on your feet that is relatively larger than the pounding put on the feet of someone who is of an average size or weight or height. And if you're thinking, but my feet are larger, so that will cancel it out, it will spread it over a larger area, let's do some very rough science. This is my Hocker. It is a UK size 11. This is Jen's Hocker. It is a UK size Elf. Let's take the surface area that you land on, and this doesn't need to be particularly exact as long as it is consistent between both of the shoes. So let's go from, say, here to here and match that on both tread patterns. My shoe is 4 inches across here by 7.5 inches long here. That gives a surface area of 30 square inches. On Jen's shoe, it is 3.5 inches across by 6.25 inches long here. That's a surface area of 21.8 inches. In other words, Jen's surface area is 72% than mine. I weigh 220 pounds. If Jen was 72% of my weight, she'd be pushing 160. She's never over 120. So she's got a 40-pound saving. Another way of looking at this is that I am 83% greater in weight than she is, but my shoe is not 83% greater in surface area than hers. In fact, if it were, the difference between that imaginary shoe and my actual shoe would be greater than the difference between my actual shoe and her actual shoe. In other words, it would be a massive shoe, no use for running whatsoever. In fact, I don't know what use that shoe would be to anything other than joining the circus perhaps. Science over, what do? Well, I pay attention to my feet because I understand the pressure they're under. And it's really simple stuff that I do consistently. I never go out for a run longer than about 20 minutes without putting some sort of lube on the end of my toes, for example. I use Vaseline if I'm in a hurry. I even carry a little tiny tin of it with me on most of my runs. If I'm feeling a bit more professional, I use a proper sports lube. Especially if I'm running in stuff like this, my King MT, my ultra big wide toe box, great for the foot to spread out and move and act naturally. But all that space in the toe box can create the opportunity for the foot, the toes, to move around a little bit more than it might do in a slightly more restrictive shoe. And that movement over time, over a long distance, can cause rubbing and blisters. And as soon as I feel something like that starting, I fix it. Unless the finish line is in sight, I will stop and I will sort it out. Out for 2.5, 3 hours plus. If something is sore, I stop, I sit at the side of the road, and I put more Vaseline on. I even carried plasters on the run. I didn't need them, but I carried plasters. If something had got really sore, I would have fixed it. Once it starts developing, once you can feel a blister or any sort of discomfort coming on, it's getting late in the day to fix it. At that point, dive in and do what you can then. I rotate my shoes. I mentioned this in my last video about staying healthy and not getting injured. The Friday and the Saturday, I ran in my new cushioned Hokas, which were great, very bouncy, very cushioned, lovely, but they have a slightly higher instep than I'm used to. So by the time I got to Sunday, I was starting to experience a little bit of rubbing on the instep. Not a huge problem, but I thought it could develop into one. So I switched. What did I end up wearing? I wore my Lone Peaks, actually, limited cushioning, but I didn't need the cushioning. I'd just done 2 days in pillows. Put these on, the little bit of rubbing that I'd had in that shoe didn't apply to this shoe. This shoe actually rubs in its own way, but it was not a rubbing that I'd experienced in the previous 2 days, so it didn't matter. Rotating my shoes puts pressure on different parts of the foot, alleviates pressure on other parts of the feet. I do not run back-to-back days, ideally in the same shoe if I can help it. Quick and easy one, I keep my toenails short. Trust me, I run in long toenails and those toenails are no longer with me. You do not make that mistake twice. I heel lock my laces. Heel lock, go Google it, lots of very useful videos online. Again, it's particularly important in these ultras. These, the big wide toe box shoes, again, it's great they have that space in the toe box, but I find that if I don't lock that heel down, what will happen is the extra space allows my foot to move forward and backwards in the shoe more easily than it would do in another shoe. So I keep my heel locked down, I keep the foot still inside the shoe. As soon as that heel loosens off, if my laces become loose over time, I feel my toes start to rub in the shoe as they're going backwards and forwards. So heel lock. And I just generally look after my feet after my runs as well. I have a pumice stone for my heels. I have moisturising cream to put on them at night. I take care of them. I massage them with a little massage ball. When I'm sat in the sauna, I put a massage ball under my foot, loosen off those tendons underneath. I basically just take care of my feet because I appreciate they are getting hammered. It has taken me a while to get fuel sorted, years in fact. When I first started doing park runs, which take place at 9 o'clock in the morning, I would get up early, 6:37, and have a bowl of porridge before I ran. And then when I ran, I'd run with a bottle of water. I'd be jogging along like this, holding water, having eaten porridge, and wondering why I felt like I was going to be sick and my arm ached. I was only running, even at my slowest, around half an hour on a park run. I didn't need a bowl of porridge to run slowly for half an hour. I didn't need water. I needed water, but I should be having that before I go running. I don't need to jog on a park run with a bottle of water. I weaned myself off, and I will now happily go and do 5, even 10k if the weather's not too hot, without worrying overly about fueling myself. I got into the habit of thinking, I need energy. Do I? If I've had a decent meal the night before and I've then gone to bed, have I expended all that energy? Probably not. It's probably going to be there at 9 o'clock in the morning for a park run. So that's the one side of it. I was over fueling and over drinking, or at least over complicating my drinking by carrying a bottle when I didn't need to. The other side of it is that when I started doing longer distances, I went the other way and I wasn't fueling enough. When I first started doing obstacle course races, some of those would take place over a 2.5 or 3 hour period, some even longer if I was being particularly slow at them. And I would end up hitting an absolute wall of problems around 2.5 hours in. I'd get cramp, which I put down to lack of electrolytes. I would get thirsty, lack of water, and I'd hit a wall, lack of energy. I wasn't fueling and hydrating anywhere near enough, especially when it was warm. The way we shed heat typically and most efficiently is through sweating, and the more surface area you have, the more surface area you can sweat off and the more cool you can get. But surface area does not go up linear with volume. Imagine you have a cube 2 centimeters by 2 centimeters. It's got a surface area of 24 centimeters squared, but it has a volume of 8 centimeters cubed. Now imagine a larger cube, 3 centimeter by 3 centimeter sides. That's now got a surface area of 54 centimeters, but a volume of 27 centimeters cubed. So the surface area has gone up 130%, but the volume has gone up 250%. If you have more volume because you are either taller or larger or just bigger in general, you will have less surface area relative to that increased volume, and you will find it harder to shift heat. Not enough surface area, that's why elephants have big ears. Obviously, if you have huge elephant size ears, you might be okay. The rest of us with normal ears, fluid becomes really, really important. I will not go and do a long run without taking water with me. If I'm doing any sort of organised run, that's all fine. But if I'm off on my own and I know that I'm going to be running somewhere where there's not shops, or the shops might not be open, if I'm running early in the morning, I will always take water. And then food. Food's an interesting one. I ran this morning, the 15k, didn't eat before I did that. I often go and run in the mornings fasted. But as soon as I'm going on a longer distance run, or it's taking place later in the day, I'll give some thought to what I've eaten before I've gone out. If the run is taking place over an hour in length, then I start to wonder whether whatever I've eaten before is going to be sufficient energy to take me through the entirety of that distance. Once I get to an hour, I start thinking, this is now at the point where additional fuel taken on board might well be useful. And my favourite at the moment is mountain fuel. I just discovered these a couple of months ago and am absolutely in love with them. They are delicious, which is not a good thing, especially their flapjack bars. The reason these are not a good thing to be delicious is because sometimes I will just eat them as a treat, and that is not a sensible thing to do. Eat these to fuel endurance. Do not eat these to fuel Netflix. But man, they are yummy. And their gels. The thing I like about their gels, I've used a whole variety of gels, and the main problem I find with them is that when you suck on one, you then need some water because it's sickly and disgusting. These are sports jellies that you don't need to take them with water. It is like sucking down jelly. Jelly for people in the UK. If you're American, not jelly, because that would be our jam. Whatever you guys call jelly. Dwight and the stapler.
You put my stuff in Jell-O again.
Gives you 20 grams of carbs. They suggest that you can have more than one in an hour-long period. You need to get used to whatever it is you're consuming and see how it works for you. On the run I did the other day, the 37k, that's all I used was these. I had one every 45 minutes or so. And that was it. And I felt really good. Never felt that I hit any sort of wall. In fact, when I finished, I felt like I just carried on plodding away. So, mountain fuel, highly recommend their jellies and their flapjacks. Their flapjacks are dangerous. I've actually, here's why they're dangerous. That's my reserve supply. This is the reserve. This isn't my main reserve. This is like extra. That's a lot of Netflix I could watch. I made some notes on focus because it's such an important part of what I do on a longer run, and I wanted to make sure I covered them all off. I basically pay attention, I focus on what I'm doing, which sounds obvious. Don't you always focus on what you're doing? I never used to. I used to stick in some earphones, listen to some music and try and just drift away. I would actively try and not focus on what I was doing because what I was doing was painful and horrible. I do now a sort of assessment from top to toe as I'm running along, and I think, is my head up? Is my chest open? Am I looking forward or looking where I'm going? If I'm hunched over like this, I'm just reducing my lung capacity. I'm not being able to breathe in as much. I tend to find that when I stoop forward around my shoulders, I get a pain in my trap at my back. As I get lower down, are my arms moving uniformly with each other and not bouncing around too loose? I try and mix my arms up, and I have no evidence scientifically on whether this works. It works for me. I focus 99% of the time on making the arm nice and rhythmic and moving, not coming up too high. As soon as my hands come up towards my face, again, I find I get stiffness in the shoulders. So are they just moving in a way that I know I can do consistently? And every now and again, I let them go loose. I make sure everything stays relaxed and then back into a nice consistent pattern again. If I just maintain the consistent pattern, I don't loosen them off. Again, I get stiff and achy. If I'm just bouncing around all over the place like a flower pot man, that's a reference Americans won't get, talking about jelly, that's no good either. So arm position and then down to my feet. Am I striding in the way that I want to? I run with a mid-foot strike. I find as soon as I get tired, I tend to stride out. I take advantage of a longer stride. If I stride out, I land on my heel, everything gets jarred. My knees, my ankles start to hurt, my hips hurt. So am I landing where I'm supposed to be landing? Especially when I'm wearing cushioned shoes. I find that with cushioned shoes, they're nice and comfy, but because they're squishy, I have to actually concentrate on, sounds weird, running in a nice straight line. I find it very easy to start rolling pronate and super pronate, rolling around on my foot. I find my foot will roll too much if I'm not concentrating on it. So am I running the way I want to? And focus on my pace, my time, the event that I'm doing. I love my Garmin for this. So many options with setting the pace up to display to me what I'm doing, what I should be doing. There's the Pace Pro feature. I've actually done a video on the Pace Pro feature. Superb way of tracking whether you're doing what you're supposed to be doing or not. Good example of that is that on the Friday run, the first 30 that I went out and ran, I could have gone an awful lot faster if it had been done in isolation. But because I knew I was going to be doing 2 more runs soon after, I made sure I went out at a nice steady pace. Actually running 5-minute 40s when I was fresh felt a bit weird. It would have been hard to do if I wasn't constantly checking and making sure that's what I was doing. Because I did do it, I was able to maintain that sort of pace throughout the entire 100 kilometers. So I focus on everything, my position, how I feel, do I need fluids, have I taken on enough water recently, when did I last have fuel, what's my pace looking like. It's a constant checking. I do still wear earphones, I do still listen to music or a podcast, but I don't let that take over. I make a mental note that every 5 minutes or so, where am I at? How am I doing? And therapy is the last one, which I've only added in for 2 reasons. One is so that I can make the joke that therapy starts with an F. And 2 is to go over the power dot again. I mentioned the power dot in my last video on staying injury free, but I kind of skimmed over it because I'd only just got it and I was basically saying I bought it because it's a cool gadget. When I got back from the run, the 37k, the long run, I was aching. Aching is the wrong word. My legs, my quads were stiff. Yeah, they just felt kind of pumped and swollen and tight and uncomfortable. Certainly in a stretch, very uncomfortable. okay, I'm going to have an evening of discomfort. I'll wake up tomorrow and feel ropey, and it's going to take a few days for that to recover fully. So, in anticipation of being in trouble, I put on my Power Dot on the quads. I told the app that comes with it I've been doing a very strenuous activity and my legs are screwed basically. Put all those details in a slightly more scientific way, and it said, okay, you need to do a 45-minute recovery session. Hit go. That was it. I sat down and I watched TV and my legs vibrated away. I jacked it up as high as I could tolerate. It wasn't uncomfortable, feels a bit weird at first, but no big deal. 45 minutes later, the program finished. Got up, my legs were cured. It was like some sort of bizarre miracle. The tightness, the stiffness had completely gone. It felt as though literally I'd had a professional sports massage. All the pain, all the discomfort, all the tightness, all the swelling in the quads, gone. Those contractions that the Power Dot had caused, they would describe it as flushing out the system, and I cannot describe it any better than that. It felt just like that. I felt great the rest of the night. I woke up in the morning. I felt so good the following day, Monday, that I had to really restrict myself and not go for a recovery run. I felt like I could easily go and run. I had to tell myself, don't be stupid, and I didn't, but I felt like I could. So, Power Dot, amazing. And all the other sort of therapeutic things I do as well. I saunaed that night as well. Again, that's just great for relieving tightness in the muscles. I made sure I got to bed early. I got a decent night's sleep. I basically looked after myself. So that's how I do it. Feet, fuel, focus, and therapy. They are not the only things I put time and effort into getting right, but they are the main ones that allow me to go out, run pretty long distances for someone of my size, and feel pretty good afterwards. That's how I did it, and here is what it looks like when it all comes together. This is the end of my 100-kilometer run.
40 meters. Let's go, buddy. Come on. Let's push. Let's push. Come on, 20 meters. Let's go. Let's go. Come on. "48 hours, 3 runs, 100k. Done. Man, I'm done." Hey, how did 100k feel? Oh, that's right, you don't know. Lightweight.